At 4:30 in the morning, Maple Row still belonged to silence. The streetlights glowed pale against the thin layer of snow gathering on the sidewalks, and every storefront sat dark except one. Carter's Bakery burned with a small amber light behind fogged windows, warm enough to make the frozen street look almost human. Inside, Lily Carter stood alone in a flour-dusted apron, kneading dough with tired hands and listening to the old oven breathe heat into the room. The town was still asleep. The bills on her counter were not, and the eviction notice beside the cash register seemed to watch her harder than any customer ever had. Lily had opened the bakery before sunrise for 9 years, just as her grandmother had done before her. Beatrice Carter used to say that bread needed patience, but people needed warmth first. That was why Carter's Bakery had never been only a place to buy rolls, pies, and cinnamon bread. It was where widowers sat when their houses felt too quiet, where nurses stopped after night shifts with red eyes and trembling smiles, where people came when they could not afford comfort but could still afford coffee, and sometimes when they could not afford even that, Lily gave it anyway. But generosity did not keep the lights on. That winter, Maple Row had begun changing in ways everyone could feel but no one could stop. A development company had purchased the buildings one by one through quiet legal language and polite letters that sounded harmless until rent doubled. The florist closed first, then the tailor, then the little record shop with the blue door. Carter's Bakery was still standing, but only because Lily had learned to stretch flour, pride, and hope further than anyone should have to. Even so, the notice on the counter gave her 30 days. She was sliding the first tray of bread into the oven when she saw him. At first, he looked like a shadow on the bench across the street. Then the light from the bakery window caught his face. A man sat there in a dark coat, shoulders hunched against the cold, bare hands folded tightly together, snow gathering on his hair, as if he had forgotten weather could hurt. He was not asleep. He was looking at the bakery, not like a hungry man looking at food, like a lost man looking at the last lit window in the world. Lily froze with one hand still on the oven door. She had learned to be careful. A woman alone before dawn could not afford to be foolish, especially in a business already hanging by a thread. She looked toward the locked front door, then toward the phone beside the register, then back at the man outside. He did not knock. He did not wave. He did not ask for help. Some people begged loudly. Others had been disappointed so often they no longer knew how. Her grandmother's voice rose in memory, soft and stubborn. If someone reaches your door before sunrise, don't ask first whether they can pay. Ask whether they are cold. Lily closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she wiped her hands on her apron, crossed the bakery, and unlocked the door. The bell above it gave a tiny sound, too cheerful for the hour. Cold air rushed in immediately, sharp enough to steal her breath. The man on the bench looked up. "You can come inside until the buses start," Lily called. Her voice carried across the empty street. The man stared at her as if he was not sure the words were meant for him. For a moment he did not move. Then he stood slowly, tall despite the exhaustion in his posture, and crossed the snow-dusted street with the caution of someone entering a place he did not deserve. Up close, he looked less poor than broken. His coat was expensive but unbuttoned, his shoes too polished for the weather, his eyes too empty for a man who should have known where he was going. "Thank you," he said when he stepped inside. His voice was low, educated, and worn down at the edges. Lily noticed that immediately. She also noticed the way he looked around the bakery, the old wooden counter, the framed photographs, the recipe cards behind glass, the flour on the floor, the little wall where customers had pinned thank you notes for years. He looked at all of it as if he had walked into someone else's memory. "What's your name?" she asked. "Nathan," he said after a pause. Not Nathaniel Reed, not the name printed on contracts, acquisition letters, and eviction notices, just Nathan. Lily poured him coffee in a chipped mug and gave him the first imperfect roll from the tray, the one she would never sell but would never waste. He held it with both hands, letting the heat reach him before taking a bite. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Outside, the snow kept falling lightly over Maple Row, covering the cracks in the sidewalk, the closed storefronts, and the future being planned by people who had never learned the names of the shopkeepers. Inside, the bakery smelled of yeast, cinnamon, butter, and survival. Nathan looked at the eviction notice on the counter. Then he saw the company name at the top, Reed Properties. His company, his family, his signature waiting on the final order that would empty this street by spring. Nathaniel Reed stood in the warmest place on Maple Row with Lily Carter's kindness in his hands and realized that the door she had opened for him belonged to the very life he had come to close. He looked at Lily, who was already turning back to the oven, unaware that the stranger she had sheltered could destroy everything she loved before breakfast, and for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt the cold not outside his coat, but inside his name. Carter's Bakery had been built before Maple Row became desirable, before glossy development brochures started calling the neighborhood up and coming, before investors discovered the charm they had never helped preserve, before rent notices arrived in envelopes polite enough to hide the threat inside them. It had begun as one narrow storefront with a green door, 2 front windows, and an oven Beatrice Carter bought secondhand from a restaurant that failed 3 towns over. People said the bakery smelled like butter and cinnamon. Lily knew better. It smelled like her grandmother's hands, her mother's laughter, and every morning her family had chosen to keep going. By 6 o'clock, the first loaves cooled on wire racks, and the bakery windows had fully fogged from the heat inside. Nathan sat near the back table, both hands wrapped around the chipped coffee mug Lily had given him. She had offered him the chair closest to the oven, then placed a folded flour sack near his feet because the floor there stayed warmest. He had not asked for anything else. That made him harder to understand. Most people in need either apologized too much or demanded too quickly. Nathan did neither. He sat like a man trying not to take up space in a room that kept offering it. Lily moved around the bakery with the tired efficiency of someone who had done the same work so many times her body remembered before her mind did. She scored bread, checked cinnamon rolls, wiped the counter, counted change, refilled sugar jars, and wrote the day's specials on a chalkboard that had belonged to her grandmother. Nathan watched without meaning to, or maybe he meant to and did not know what to call it. There was nothing polished about her morning. No performance, no brand strategy, just one woman holding a small place together with flour, discipline, and a kind of stubborn tenderness he had never seen in boardrooms. "You don't have to sit so straight," Lily said without looking up. Nathan blinked. "I'm sorry? You look like you're waiting for someone to ask for your credentials." For the first time since he stepped inside, something almost like a smile touched his face. "Habit, maybe. Dangerous habit for a bakery," she said, sliding a tray onto the counter. "Around here, the only credential that matters is whether you can handle hot coffee and honest bread." Honest bread? The kind that doesn't pretend to be cake. He looked down at the roll in his hand, the crust torn open to reveal steam. "It's good," he said. Lily gave him a glance that was half gratitude, half suspicion. "You sound surprised. I think I forgot food could taste like someone made it for a person, not a photograph." That sentence made her pause. It was too specific to be casual and too sad to be charming. She studied him again. The expensive coat, the absence of gloves, the carefully hidden exhaustion, the way his eyes kept returning to the photographs on the wall. "You're not from around here?" she said. "No," he answered. "Passing through?" He hesitated too long. Something like that. Lily had learned that vague answers usually came with trouble attached. Still, she did not press. Everyone who entered Carter's before sunrise carried something. Some carried grief, some carried hunger, some carried secrets they had not yet decided whether to survive. Nathan looked like he carried a whole locked room. The bell over the door rang at 6:15, and Martha Ellis stepped in wrapped in a purple wool coat and the same knitted hat she wore every winter. Martha was 74, though she claimed age was only a number invented by doctors to make people behave. She had lived on Maple Row since before the street had parking meters and still believed every problem could be made slightly less terrible with tea. "Morning, Lily," she called, shaking snow from her boots. Then her eyes moved to Nathan. "Oh, we have company before sunrise." Lily reached for a paper bag. "Only the frozen kind." Martha's gaze sharpened with interest, but she was too kind to stare openly for more than 3 seconds. "Then he came to the right place." Lily placed 2 rolls in the bag and added a small container of soup from the back fridge. Martha frowned. "I only asked for 1 roll." "I know. I didn't bring enough for soup." "I know that too." Martha sighed, pretending irritation because gratitude made her emotional. "You are becoming impossible just like B." Lily's face softened at her grandmother's name. "That's the nicest complaint I'll hear all day." Nathan watched the exchange with a strange ache beneath his ribs. In his world, kindness was often documented, named, branded, deducted, photographed, or converted into leverage. Here, Lily gave soup to an old woman and made it sound like poor arithmetic instead of charity. Martha left coins on the counter anyway, then leaned closer to Lily. "Samuel says the locksmith got a notice too." Lily's hand stilled. "Another one?" Martha nodded. "Whole street, honey. They're not coming for one door. They're coming for all of them." The bakery seemed quieter after that. Nathan looked down at his coffee, but the words had already found him. whole street. He had heard that phrase in another language 2 days earlier, Consolidated Redevelopment Zone. In the presentation, Maple Row had appeared as a clean aerial rendering with highlighted parcels, projected revenue, tenant displacement timelines, and a future name that sounded expensive enough to erase the past. No one had mentioned Martha in the purple coat. No one had mentioned soup. No one had mentioned that every door scheduled for closure had a bell that rang when someone entered. Lily folded the top of Martha's bag too tightly. "I'll talk to Samuel after closing." "You need sleep after closing," Martha said. "I'll sleep when developers stop sending letters." Martha's eyes moved briefly toward the envelope beside the register. Nathan followed the glance before he could stop himself. There it was again, the eviction notice. Reed Properties. Black ink, formal language, 30 days. He had signed acquisition memos for streets like this before. He had never once sat close enough to watch someone avoid looking at the paper because looking made it more real. After Martha left, Lily began arranging pastries in the glass case. Her movements were brisk now, almost too controlled. Nathan stood slowly. "I should go. You can stay until you're warm enough." "I'm warm." She looked at his bare hands. "You're lying politely." He almost smiled again, then stopped. "I don't want to be in the way." Lily closed the pastry case and faced him. "You were in the cold. That made you more in the way of my conscience than my floor space." The sentence struck him harder than it should have. Nathan looked toward the wall of photographs. There were decades on that wall, children with frosting on their cheeks, couples holding anniversary cakes, exhausted nurses with coffee cups, Beatrice Carter laughing beside a younger Lily, storefronts that no longer existed, handwritten thank you notes pinned crookedly between memories. It was not decoration, it was evidence. Proof that Carter's Bakery had held more lives than any spreadsheet could count. Then, near the upper corner, half hidden behind a faded Christmas card, Nathan saw a photograph that made his breath stop. A woman stood beside Beatrice Carter in front of the bakery, both of them smiling into winter sunlight. The woman wore a camel coat, pearl earrings, and a look Nathan had not seen clearly since childhood. His mother, not in the formal portraits his father kept in silver frames, not distant, posed, and unreachable. Here, she was laughing, really laughing. Holding a paper bag from Carter's Bakery as if it contained something more precious than bread, Nathan stepped closer before he realized he was moving. Lily noticed immediately. "You know her?" Nathan's throat tightened. For a moment, he could not speak. His father had told him his mother hated ordinary places, that she had been made for concert halls, private clubs, and houses with gates. But the woman in the photo looked alive in front of a small bakery on a street his company planned to erase. He stopped. His voice came out rougher when he tried again. "She looks familiar?" Lily studied him carefully. "She came here years ago. My grandmother said she liked the cinnamon bread." "What was her name?" Nathan asked, though he already knew. Lily reached up and gently freed the photograph from behind the card. "There's writing on the back." She turned it over. "B. and Caroline Reed, winter 1998. The bakery tilted slightly around him. Caroline Reed. His mother's name in Lily's hands. A piece of her life his father had never given him. A piece of her warmth preserved on the wall of a bakery Nathan had come to close. Before Lily could ask anything else, Nathan's phone vibrated inside his coat. He looked at the screen. Evelyn Shaw. He should have ignored it. He did not. "Excuse me," he said, stepping near the front window. Lily pretended to adjust the pastry tags, but she heard enough. "Yes," Nathan said quietly. "No, do not send anyone yet." A pause. "I understand the demolition schedule." Lily's hand froze over a tray of croissants. When Nathan turned back, the warmth in the bakery had changed. Lily was standing behind the counter now, the photograph of his mother still in her hand, and something sharp beginning to enter her eyes. "Demolition schedule?" she asked. Nathan's face lost color. Outside, the pale morning sun began to touch Maple Row, lighting the closed shops, the snow, the old signs, and the windows of Carter's Bakery. For a few fragile hours, Lily had believed she had sheltered a stranger from the cold. Now she looked at the man in front of her and wondered whether she had opened her grandmother's door to the person sent to erase it. Nathan had heard many dangerous questions in his life, but none had ever sounded as gentle or as devastating as Lily Carter asking, "Demolition schedule?" The bakery seemed to hold its breath around them. The oven clicked softly behind her. The windows glowed with the first weak light of morning. And the photograph of his mother remained in Lily's hand, linking him to a place he had no right to threaten and no courage yet to explain. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Reed did not feel powerful. He felt caught. "It's not what it sounds like," he said. Lily's expression changed, not with anger first, but disappointment. That was worse. Anger might have given him something to defend against. Disappointment made the air between them feel honest. In my experience, she said slowly, people only say that when it is exactly what it sounds like. Nathan looked down at the phone still in his hand, Evelyn's name fading from the screen. Every second of silence made him look more guilty. Because he was. Lily set the photograph carefully on the counter, as if the paper deserved more tenderness than the conversation. Who are you? He had given her part of an answer before. Nathan, a name stripped of family, company, consequence, and power. But now the rest of it stood at the door, demanding entry. He swallowed. My name is Nathaniel Reed. The last name changed the room instantly. Lily's face went very still. Not confused, not surprised enough to need explanation. She had read that name on the notice beside the register too many times not to understand. Reed Properties, she said. Yes. Her eyes moved to the eviction notice, then back to him. You own the company trying to take this bakery? I'm part of it, he said, hating the weakness of the words as soon as they left him. Lily's mouth tightened. Part of it is what people say when they want the power without the responsibility. The sentence landed cleanly. Nathan did not argue. He had spent years inside rooms where language softened consequences. Lily did not allow language to hide anything. I didn't know what this place was when I came in, he said. You knew by the time you drank my coffee. He looked at her then, and there was nothing he could say that would not make him smaller, because she was right. He had seen the notice. He had seen his company name. He had stayed. He had accepted bread from her hands while knowing those same hands might be forced to lock the bakery forever because of documents waiting for his approval. I should have told you, he said. Yes, Lily replied. You should have? The words were quiet, but they struck harder than shouting. She turned away for a moment, not because she feared him, but because the bakery was suddenly too full of him. His name on the notice, his mother in the photograph, his silence in the air, his company wrapped around every building outside. When she turned back, her eyes were bright, but no tear fell. I gave you shelter in the one place you were sent to erase. Nathan closed his eyes. There it was. The truth, sharper than any accusation he could have written himself. I came to Maple Row because I was not sure I could sign it, he said. Sign what? The final displacement order. Lily flinched at the phrase. Nathan hated himself for using it. It would start the last stage of the redevelopment process. The last stage, she repeated. You mean the part where everyone leaves? He nodded once. I came here before dawn because I couldn't sleep. I walked the street. I saw the light on. I sat down. I didn't plan... He stopped because the sentence was insulting before he finished it. You didn't plan to become human before breakfast? Lily asked. The words were bitter now, and he deserved them. Nathan looked at the photograph on the counter. My mother used to come here. That does not make this easier. No, he said. It makes it worse. For the first time, Lily saw something in his face beyond guilt. Grief. Not polished, not useful, not performed. The kind that had been locked away so long it no longer knew how to enter a room without breaking something. My father told me she hated places like this, Nathan said. Small places, ordinary places. He said she was never comfortable unless everything was elegant. Lily looked at the photograph. In it, Caroline Reed's smile was open, almost girlish, as she stood beside Beatrice Carter with a bakery bag in her hand. She looks comfortable to me, Lily said. Nathan nodded, and the motion seemed to cost him. That is the problem. The bakery fell silent again, but differently this time. The first silence had been accusation. This one carried a wound neither of them had expected to share. Before Lily could answer, the bell above the door rang. Samuel Brooks stepped in carrying a box of worn leather boots beneath one arm and a stack of envelopes in the other hand. He was in his late 30s, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes and the solid dignity of a man who had kept his small shoe repair shop alive through impossible winters. Lily? He said, then stopped when he saw Nathan. His gaze moved from Nathan's expensive coat to Lily's tense face to the eviction notice on the counter. What happened? Lily did not look away from Nathan. Mr. Reed was just explaining the demolition schedule. Samuel's expression hardened immediately. Reed? Nathan straightened, accepting the hostility without surprise. Samuel set the box on the nearest table. So you're the man buying our street. Nathan could have corrected him. He could have said company structures were complicated, ownership was shared, his father still controlled certain voting powers, Evelyn managed execution, the board had approved the concept long before this morning. Instead, he said, yes. Samuel gave a humorless laugh. At least he knows one honest word. Lily stepped out from behind the counter. Samuel? No, Lily. We've been writing letters for weeks, and he was sitting here eating breakfast? Nathan looked down. It was not my intention to deceive her. Samuel turned on him. Intentions don't pack boxes. Notices do. The bakery door opened again before anyone could respond, and Martha entered slowly, sensing tension before the bell stopped ringing. "Oh," she said softly. The morning got colder. Within minutes, the bakery began filling the way it often did after sunrise, but the air had changed. Regular customers entered, noticed faces, and lowered their voices. Samuel made 2 calls. Martha sat near the window, hands folded over her purse. Lily stood beside the counter with the photograph of Caroline Reed now lying between the coffee pot and the eviction notice. Nathan remained near the back table, no longer a stranger and not welcome enough to be anything else. He understood then that ownership could enter a place without belonging to it. He owned the buildings. Lily belonged to the street. "I should leave," Nathan said. Lily looked at him. "Is that what you do? Enter, learn the damage has faces, then leave before they ask you what you'll do about it?" Samuel muttered. "Sounds about right." Nathan accepted that too. He deserved their distrust. But leaving now would be another form of cowardice, and he had already used enough polite cowardice to build a life. "I will suspend the order," he said. Samuel's eyes narrowed. "For how long?" Nathan answered. 30 days. A bitter laugh moved through the room. 30 days, Samuel said. "Generous. We can all lose sleep more slowly." Lily did not laugh. She only looked tired. 30 days is not salvation, Nathaniel. "I know." "Do you? Because people like you often mistake delay for mercy." The bakery went silent again. Nathan looked at the old oven, the handwritten menu, the photographs, the people gathered with fear disguised as anger. "No," he said quietly. "I am beginning to understand that mercy without change is only better timing." His phone vibrated again. This time, he answered in front of them. "Evelyn?" The room sharpened around the name. "No legal action today. No site visits. No contractor communication. Suspend all displacement activity on Maple Row for 30 days. A pause. Evelyn's voice was not audible, but her displeasure seemed to travel through the device. Nathan looked at Lily while he answered, "Yes, I understand what my father will say." Another pause. "Tell him I said it." He ended the call. No one applauded. Nathan was grateful for that. Applause would have been more than he deserved. Lily crossed her arms. "Why?" The question held no softness. "Because I should have walked into this bakery as the man responsible for the notice, not as someone hiding from it. That explains why you should have told me, not why you stopped it." Nathan looked toward the photograph. "Because this morning is the first time I understood that my company has been calling memory an obstacle." His voice grew quieter. "And because my mother's smile is on your wall." Lily picked up the photograph carefully and placed it back where it had been, beside old thank you notes and pictures of people who had found warmth inside Carter's bakery long before developers learned to price the street. "You don't get to use her memory to make yourself feel forgiven," she said. Nathan looked at her, and the pain in his face did not ask her to remove the truth. "I know." "Good." She turned the sign on the door from closed to open, though everyone inside understood that something much larger had already opened and could not be easily shut again. Nathan stood near the back table, surrounded by the people his company had tried to reduce to paperwork, and realized 30 days would not be enough to save Maple Row. But it was enough time for him to decide what kind of man he would become before the street disappeared under his name. For the rest of that morning, Nathaniel Reed remained inside Carter's bakery like a man standing in a room after the verdict had been read. No one asked him to leave, but no one made room for him either. Samuel spoke with shopkeepers by phone near the window, his voice low and angry. Martha sat at her usual table watching Nathan with the kind of patience that made guilt feel even more visible. Lily served customers, wrapped loaves, refilled coffee, and answered worried questions with a steadiness that looked almost painful. Every few minutes, Nathan's eyes returned to the photograph on the wall. His mother, laughing beside Beatrice Carter, holding a bakery bag as if she had been caught in a moment of ordinary happiness. He had seen hundreds of photographs of Caroline Reed, formal portraits in silver frames, charity event pictures with pearls at her throat and his father's hand at her back, magazine clippings where she stood beside men whose names still opened doors in the city. In all of them, she looked beautiful, distant, and unreachable. But the woman on Lily's wall was different. Her hair was slightly windblown. Her smile was unguarded. There was flour on the sleeve of her camel coat, and she did not seem to mind. Lily noticed him looking again while she tied string around a box of cinnamon rolls. "That photo has been there since I was a kid," she said. Nathan turned toward her carefully as if the wrong movement might break the fragile permission in her voice. "My grandmother kept everything. Pictures, thank you cards, old receipts, recipes with notes in the margins." She looked up at the wall. "She said people disappear twice if nobody keeps proof they laughed." Nathan swallowed. His father had kept proof that Caroline Reed had been elegant. Beatrice Carter had kept proof that she had been happy. "Did your grandmother ever talk about her?" Nathan asked. Lily hesitated. The morning's betrayal still stood between them, but the question was not strategic. It was almost childlike. So she answered with caution. A little. B said Caroline came in mostly in the late afternoons when the street was quieter. She always bought cinnamon bread and black coffee, though my grandmother said she looked like someone who had been told sugar was a moral failure. Despite himself, Nathan let out a small, broken laugh. That sounds like the house I grew up in. Lily's expression softened for half a second before she remembered not to give him too much. B said she was kind. Nathan looked at the photograph again. She was. The answer came quickly, from a place older than business and guilt. Then his face changed. At least I think she was. I was young when she died. Most of what I know about her came through my father, and he turned memory into a museum. Lily leaned one hand against the counter. A museum? Beautiful, quiet, untouchable, mostly arranged by the person still alive. The sentence stayed in the air longer than either expected. Outside, Maple Row had fully awakened. A delivery truck passed slowly over the snow-packed curb. The locksmith across the street lifted his metal gate with a sound that echoed down the block. A florist's old sign swung above an empty storefront, though no flowers had been sold there in months. Nathan looked out at the street he had helped acquire and saw, for the first time, not underperforming assets but absences. Closed doors, removed voices, memories already half erased. Lily placed the cinnamon roll box on the pickup counter. My grandmother said your mother used to sit right there. She pointed toward a small table near the front window. She would take off her gloves, wrap both hands around the coffee mug, and stare outside like she was trying to remember she had permission to breathe. Nathan's eyes moved to the table. The chair was empty now, morning light falling across its worn wooden surface. My father never mentioned this place. That doesn't surprise me, Lily said. Then she added, not unkindly, some men only remember the rooms where they felt in control. Nathan looked at her. The words had touched more than his father. Lily realized it too, but she did not apologize. She had spent too many years softening truth so powerful people could swallow it more comfortably. Nathan did not seem offended. If anything, he looked as if he had been waiting his whole life for someone to name the shape of the silence he grew up inside. My father built towers after she died, he said. More buildings, more acquisitions, more rooms with glass walls and locked elevators. I used to think ambition kept him alive. And now? Now I wonder if he was trying to make grief too tall to look over. Lily looked away first, not because the sentence was false, but because it was too honest for a man she was still angry with. She began wiping the already clean counter, needing movement. Nathan watched her hand move in small circles over the wood. I am not asking you to feel sorry for me, he said. Good, she replied. I don't have extra sympathy lying around today. This time, the corner of his mouth lifted, though sadness stayed in his eyes. The bell rang again, and an elderly man entered for 2 dinner rolls and the exact same complaint he apparently made every morning about the price of butter. Lily handled him with dry humor and a patience that did not make herself small. Nathan stood aside, absorbing the rhythm of the place. This was not charity disguised as business. It was business shaped by memory, community, argument, habit, forgiveness, irritation, hunger, warmth, and history. A living thing, and Reed Properties had described it in a memo as Parcel 14B. By noon, the bakery had thinned enough for silence to return in pieces. Samuel had gone to warn the remaining shopkeepers about the 30-day suspension. Martha had left after making Nathan promise with terrifying politeness that he would not solve the street like a man fixing a stain on his cuff. Lily locked the cash drawer and counted the morning's earnings twice. The total was not enough. Nathan did not need to see the number to know. Her shoulders told him. The careful way she closed the drawer told him. The way she did not look at the eviction notice told him most. I can help with the immediate debt, he said quietly. Lily did not look up. No, you don't know what I was going to offer. I know enough. He took a step closer, then stopped when she looked at him. This is not pride, she said. Do not make the mistake of calling it that. I wasn't. You were thinking it. He had been. Not cruelly, perhaps, but still. Nathan lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. Lily untied her apron and folded it with deliberate care. If you hand me money before you understand what your company broke, then I become a receipt in your redemption story. Nathan felt the sentence enter him and stay. A receipt? He repeated softly. Yes. Proof that you paid for damage instead of repairing it. He looked around the bakery at the old counter, the oven, the wall of photographs, the table where his mother had once sat. What would repair look like? Lily's face tightened. That is the first honest question you've asked. She walked to the wall and took down a different photograph. This one showed Maple Row 20 years earlier during a summer street fair. The tailor stood beside a rack of shirts. The record shop owner held a guitar. Beatrice Carter was handing bread to a police officer, laughing with his mouth full. Children's chalk drawings covered the sidewalk. None of the stores looked expensive. All of them looked alive. This street was never fancy, Lily said. But people belonged here without proving they could afford to. Nathan studied the picture. The strangest ache opened in him because he could see it now. His mother might have come here not despite its ordinariness, but because of it. Because no one asked her to be Caroline Reed, wife of Graham Reed, polished woman in a polished house. Here, perhaps, she had simply been a woman with cold hands and a craving for cinnamon bread. The thought made him feel both closer to her and angrier than he expected. "What did my mother say to your grandmother?" he asked. Lily turned the photo over, checking the back. No note on this one. Then she glanced toward the small office behind the bakery. "But B kept recipe cards and letters. If your mother came here often, there may be something." Nathan's expression changed so quickly that Lily wished she had not offered hope without knowing whether it existed. "I don't want to take anything from you," he said. "You already own half the street," she answered. The words stung, and she let them. Then more quietly she said, "But memories should go where they are needed." They spent the early afternoon in the bakery office, a cramped room with shelves of old ledgers, recipe tins, holiday decorations, and boxes labeled in Beatrice Carter's looping handwriting. Lily searched while Nathan stood near the doorway, careful not to touch anything unless invited. That restraint did not erase what he had hidden, but Lily noticed it. Inside a blue recipe box, beneath cards for molasses rolls and winter fruitcake, she found an envelope marked CR, cinnamon bread, always extra butter. Nathan stopped breathing. Lily opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note from Caroline Reed to Beatrice Carter. The ink had faded, but the words remained clear enough to wound and heal at once. "Dear B, thank you for making this little bakery feel like the only place in town where no one expects me to shine. Some days, I come here because your bread is warm and because you let me be tired. If my son ever finds his way to Maple Row, I hope he learns what I did. Not every valuable thing is meant to be owned. Some things are meant to be protected." Lily read the final sentence aloud, and the bakery seemed to go still around them. Nathan sat down hard in the office chair, one hand covering his mouth, while outside the front windows of Carter's Bakery, Maple Row waited under his company's name. For a long moment after Lily read Caroline Reed's note aloud, neither she nor Nathan said anything. The bakery office was too small for the silence that followed. Old recipe boxes crowded the shelves. A string of faded Christmas lights hung unplugged above a filing cabinet. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, paper, and the past. Nathan sat in the old wooden chair with one hand still over his mouth, looking at the letter as if it had reached across years and taken him by the shoulders. Lily held the paper carefully, aware that she was holding something more intimate than evidence. His mother had written those words before he was old enough to understand what she was asking him to protect. Not every valuable thing is meant to be owned. Some things are meant to be protected. Nathan had spent his adult life doing the opposite. He had learned to value places by what they could become after being emptied, polished, renamed, and sold back to people with better shoes. Now his mother's handwriting sat between him and Lily Carter, accusing him with tenderness. That somehow hurt more than anger would have. "She knew," he whispered. Lily looked at him. "Knew what?" "That my father would never understand a place like this." His voice was rough, almost unfamiliar. "She used to argue with him about buildings. I was young, but I remember doors closing, voices lowering. My father saying sentiment was what people used when they had no leverage." Lily folded the note with care and placed it on the desk. "Your mother had leverage." Nathan gave a broken laugh without humor. "She had warmth. In my father's world, that counted as weakness." Lily wanted to despise him cleanly. It would have been easier if Nathaniel Reed were only another rich man hiding behind contracts. But grief complicated people. It did not excuse them, but it made hatred less simple. She looked at him in her grandmother's cramped office, surrounded by recipes and unpaid supply invoices, and saw a man discovering that the thing he came to destroy had once sheltered his own mother. Still, Lily reminded herself that his pain did not cancel hers. His mother's letter did not erase the eviction notice. A wound inside him did not make the knife in his hand harmless. She straightened. "You should go." Nathan looked up quickly. "Lily, no. You have a lot to think about, and I have a bakery to run." He stood but did not move toward her. "I want to help. I know you do." The softness in her voice was dangerous because it was real, so she made it firmer. "But right now, every offer from you sounds like someone trying to put a pillow under the wrecking ball." Nathan absorbed the words without defending himself. That too made him harder to hate. "I will not sign the order," he said. Lily's eyes lifted sharply. "That is not enough." "I know. Do you? Because a lot of powerful men think not doing the worst thing available makes them good. The sentence landed exactly where she meant it to. Nathan lowered his gaze. I'm beginning to understand how low my standards for goodness have been. Then raise them somewhere else today? He nodded once, accepting the dismissal. Before leaving, he looked at the wall of photographs again. His mother smiled from between a summer street fair and a faded thank you card from a nurse Lily barely remembered. Nathan seemed to want to say goodbye to the image, but stopped himself, perhaps understanding he had not earned the right to claim it yet. At the door, he turned back. If I find a way to stop this properly, will you listen? Lily held his gaze. If you find a way to stop this without making yourself the hero of our survival, I'll listen. Nathan opened the door and stepped into the cold afternoon. The bell had barely stopped ringing when Lily's knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the counter until the bakery steadied around her. It was one thing to fight a faceless corporation. It was another to feed the man behind it, show him her grandmother's memories, and feel a piece of compassion for him against her better judgment. She looked at the eviction notice beside the register. Reed Properties, 30 days. Formal language printed over the life of a place that had held soup, laughter, grief, birthdays, apologies, and Caroline Reed's tired afternoons. Lily folded the notice in half, then unfolded it again. The problem did not disappear because she hated looking at it. By closing time, Maple Row had heard enough to become restless. Samuel came by with 2 shopkeepers, Elise from the old stationery store and Mr. Kwan from the locksmith. Martha arrived with a notebook and the expression of a woman prepared to organize a revolution with tea. They gathered around 3 pushed-together tables while Lily placed day-old rolls in a basket and coffee in the middle. No one called it a meeting at first. People were careful with words when fear sat in the room, but everyone knew that was what it was. Samuel spoke first. He suspended the order for 30 days. That means he can unsuspend it. Elise nodded, twisting a paper napkin between her fingers. My landlord already said the new terms are impossible. Mr. Kwan stared into his coffee. My father opened the locksmith shop after the war. We changed every lock on this street at least once. Martha tapped her notebook. Then we need records, stories, proof this street is more than a row of underperforming storefronts. Lily looked at the faces around her and felt the weight of being expected to hope. I found a letter, she said. Everyone looked at her. Lily hesitated, then told them about Caroline Reed's note, not all of it, not the private grief, but enough for the room to understand. Nathan's mother had known the bakery. She had loved it. She had written that some valuable things were meant to be protected. Samuel's expression hardened. Convenient. It wasn't planted, Lily said. I know my grandmother's boxes. I'm not saying the letter is fake. I'm saying rich guilt has a way of turning into good publicity if we're not careful. Lily could not argue with that. Samuel had seen too many promises made in polished rooms and broken in mailboxes. We are not giving him the story, she said. This is ours first, Martha nodded approvingly. Good. Then what do we want? The question silenced them. Not because they lacked answers, but because wanting had become dangerous. They wanted leases they could afford, repairs without displacement, protection from demolition, a future where their signs remained above their doors, a say in what happened to the place they had kept alive before investors saw charm in it. We need legal help, Elise said. We need press, Samuel added. We need old records, Mr. Kwan said. We need to stop sounding like we're begging, Lily said. Her own voice surprised her. The room turned toward her. She looked around the bakery at the photographs, the chalkboard, the old oven door scratched from decades of use. We are not asking them to be kind. We are asking them to acknowledge that a street can have value that their reports do not measure. Martha smiled slowly. There she is. The bell above the door rang. Every head turned. Nathan stood in the doorway. He had changed his coat, but not his expression. He looked less frozen now and more stripped down, as if the hours since leaving had removed something he used to hide behind. Samuel rose immediately. You have terrible timing. Nathan looked at him. I know. Lily did not move from her place at the table. We're closed. I know that too. Then why are you here? Nathan took a folded document from inside his coat and placed it on the table closest to the door, not near Lily, not forcing himself into the circle. I brought the current project structure, parcel ownership, demolition timeline, lease termination schedule, investor commitments, contractor holds. The words chilled the room. Elise's hand went to her mouth. Samuel stepped forward. Are you threatening us with paperwork? No, Nathan said. I'm giving you the documents my company hoped you would never see in one place. That stopped everyone. Lily stood slowly. Why? Because you cannot fight shadows. His eyes met hers. And because I have been standing inside the shadow pretending it wasn't mine. Martha's gaze sharpened. Is this legal for you to share? Nathan's mouth tightened. Complicated, Samuel scoffed. That means no. It means there may be consequences. For you? Lily asked. Yes. The room became very quiet. For the first time since meeting him, Lily saw the cost of his choice arrive before the benefit. He was not handing out charity. He was handing them leverage against his own company. That did not make him trustworthy. It made him useful in a way that might begin to matter. She walked to the table and opened the top page. There it was, Maple Row Redevelopment Initiative. Beneath it, a map of the entire street divided into parcels, each number clean and bloodless. Carter's Bakery was marked 14B, Samuel's shop was 11A, Martha's apartment building was 9C. Lily touched the tiny rectangle labeled 14B. My grandmother's life is a box on your map. Nathan's voice was quiet. Yes. And you signed this? I approved the acquisition phase. Did you read the tenant impact reports? He hesitated. That was answer enough. Lily looked up, pain and anger returning to her face. You gave your name to something you did not even bother to know. Nathan looked at the circle of people around him, each one holding a piece of the street his ignorance had endangered. Yes, he said. And if you let me, I will help you make sure I can never hide behind not knowing again. No one touched the documents for several seconds. The pages lay on the bakery table beneath the warm overhead lights, clean and official and almost indecent against the flour-dusted wood. Lily stared at the map of Maple Row until the neat property lines seemed to cut through more than buildings. They cut through Martha's morning walks, Samuel's father's old workbench, Elise's stationery shelves, Mr. Kwan's key hooks, the faded mural near the alley, the bell above Carter's Bakery, and the table where Caroline Reed had once sat with her hands wrapped around coffee. Nathan stood near the door, waiting for anger he knew he had earned. No one disappointed him. Samuel reached the table first and picked up the top page like it was something contaminated. Tenant displacement schedule, he read, his voice rough. Elise, your store is in phase 2. Elise turned pale. Phase 2? 6 weeks after Carter's. Mr. Kwan took off his glasses, wiped them, and put them back on, as if the numbers might become kinder with clearer vision. Martha looked at Nathan without blinking. You people put dates on grief and called it planning? Nathan lowered his eyes. Yes. That yes is getting very comfortable, Samuel snapped. Nathan looked up. It shouldn't. No, it shouldn't. Because every time you say it, we're supposed to believe remorse is the same as repair. Lily heard the anger in Samuel's voice and understood it. She also saw Nathan's face and hated that she could now recognize the difference between shame performed for sympathy and shame that had nowhere elegant to stand. Still, recognition was not trust. She stepped closer to the table. Samuel is right. These documents help us, but they do not fix what you helped set in motion. Nathan nodded. I know. Lily held his gaze. Then stop only saying that. The room fell silent. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the authority of someone whose patience had been used as a resource by too many people. You came here with paperwork. Good. Now tell us what power you still have, what power your father has, what Evelyn can execute without you, and where this project can be legally stopped. Nathan looked at the faces around him. For the first time, he was not being asked to rescue them. He was being asked to tell the truth completely. So he did. He explained the acquisition structure in plain language, avoiding the kind of corporate vocabulary that made harm sound weather-related. Reed Properties controlled most of the street, but not every building outright. Some leases had protection clauses. Some sale agreements depended on zoning approval. Contractors had been hired but not fully authorized. His father still held enough voting power to push the project forward if Nathan failed to act quickly. Evelyn could legally proceed with certain site inspections, but not demolition without final written authorization. And the authorization? Lily asked. Nathan's answer was quiet. Requires my signature. Samuel exhaled sharply. So don't sign. That stops demolition, Nathan said. It does not solve the debt pressure, lease escalations, investor claims, or the fact that some owners already sold because they were cornered. Martha leaned forward. Then we need more than a pause. Yes. What do we need? Elise asked. Nathan looked at Lily, not for permission exactly, but because the room had begun to understand who held its center. Lily saw the question and forced herself not to look away. Tell us, she said. A counterproposal, Nathan answered. Not a plea. Not a protest only. A viable plan that preserves local businesses, repairs the buildings, generates enough revenue to satisfy investors, and creates legal barriers against future displacement. Samuel laughed once. Simple. It isn't, Nathan said. No, Lily replied, studying the map. But impossible is what people call things before someone starts breaking them into steps. Martha smiled faintly. That sounds like B. Lily swallowed the ache that came with her grandmother's name. Then let's make her proud. The bakery became a command center by 8 that night. Tables were pushed together, coffee was brewed in large pots. Old property records appeared from filing cabinets, shoeboxes, and the back rooms of shops that had kept more history than anyone expected. Martha called a retired city clerk she knew from church. Samuel pulled out decades of receipts proving how long his family business had served the neighborhood. Elise brought photographs of Maple Row festivals, handwritten orders, letters from customers, and a framed newspaper clipping about the street after a winter storm years earlier. Nathan sat among them, not at the head of the table, but with a legal pad, writing what they said. That mattered more than he knew. Lily noticed where he chose to sit. Not beside her, not opposite Samuel like an opponent, not near the documents like their owner. He sat slightly back, within reach but not in control, letting the people who lived the story tell it first. Whenever someone said something emotional, he did not translate it into business terms immediately. He wrote it down as spoken. Martha's sentence: "This bakery fed me when grief made cooking feel impossible." Samuel's sentence: "My father repaired shoes for men who could not buy new ones." Elise's sentence: "People wrote love letters here before they texted apologies." Hours passed. Outside, the street grew dark and the snow reflected the yellow glow from Carter's windows. Inside, fear slowly changed shape. It did not disappear, but it became motion. People who had spent weeks feeling hunted began arguing over strategy, calling contacts, searching archives, making lists. Lily moved between tables with coffee and bread, but she was not merely serving. She was listening, organizing, asking sharper questions than anyone expected, and reminding everyone when panic started pretending to be prophecy. Nathan watched her and understood why the bakery had survived this long. It had Lily's spine inside its walls. Near midnight, Samuel finally confronted Nathan directly. "Why should we trust that you won't take all this back to your father?" The room quieted again. Nathan set down his pen. "You shouldn't trust me yet?" Samuel's brows lifted. "That's your answer?" "Yes." Lily looked at him carefully. Nathan continued, "Trust would be convenient for me. It would make me feel less like the man who helped create this. But you don't owe me convenience. Use the documents. Verify what I say. Let Julian or another attorney review everything. Keep me in the room only as long as I am useful and honest." Martha leaned back in her chair. "Well," she said, "that is annoyingly reasonable." A few people almost laughed. The tension did not break entirely, but it cracked enough for everyone to breathe. Lily looked down at the map again. "What if we ask for historic commercial designation?" she said. Nathan turned toward her. "For the whole street? For the buildings that qualify? And for the businesses as cultural anchors?" Samuel stared at her. "Can we do that?" Nathan answered slowly. "Maybe. It would not stop every investor claim, but it could change the legal and public pressure dramatically." "Then that is one path," Lily said. "Evelyn Shaw would have called the idea emotional obstruction. Graham Reed would have called it inefficient. Nathan, listening to Lily speak, recognized it as leadership. Not loud, not polished, not interested in being adored. Leadership rooted in the refusal to let fear become the only architect. He began sketching the counter-proposal: preservation district, phased renovations, revenue-sharing leases, local ownership protections, public-private grant applications, tax credits, tenant advisory board. The words were technical. For once, they served the people in the room instead of hiding them. At 2 in the morning, one by one, the others began leaving. Samuel left last after Martha, pausing near Nathan with a look that was still far from friendly, but no longer purely hostile. "If you betray her," Samuel said quietly, "you betray all of us." Nathan did not look away. "I know?" Samuel shook his head. "There's that word again." This time Nathan answered differently. "Then I'll make sure it becomes action." Samuel studied him for a moment, then left without reply. The bell above the door rang softly behind him. Lily and Nathan remained alone in the bakery. The counter was covered in documents, crumbs, coffee rings, and the beginnings of a plan that looked too fragile to trust and too necessary to abandon. Lily removed her apron and folded it over a chair. "You should go home," she said. Nathan looked around the bakery. "I'm not sure where that is tonight." She did not answer immediately. The sentence was not manipulative, it was simply sad. And Lily, despite everything, understood what it meant to stand in the middle of your own life and no longer recognize the place you were supposed to belong. "You can't sleep here again," she said. "I know. Not because I hate you. I know that too. Because the first time I didn't know who you were." Nathan nodded. "And now you do." "Some of it," Lily said. Her voice softened before she could stop it. "Maybe more than you wanted me to." He looked at her then, and the space between them filled with all the things neither of them could name safely yet. His mother's letter, her grandmother's bakery, the street map, the betrayal, the beginning of respect. Nathan gathered the duplicate documents and placed them neatly in a folder for Lily. "I'll meet with Evelyn in the morning," he said. "Will she fight you?" "Yes." "Your father?" "Worse." Lily leaned against the counter. "And if they remove you from the project? Then I will have to decide whether I work for the company or against what it is doing." That answer made her look at him differently, not with forgiveness, not with trust, but with the first faint recognition that he might be standing near the edge of a cost he could not easily control. Before he left, Nathan paused by the wall of photographs. This time, he did not reach for his mother's picture. He only looked at it, then at Lily. "I don't want to use her memory," he said. Lily's expression remained guarded. "Then don't. I want to understand why she came here." Lily looked around the bakery, the tired oven, the old tables, the remaining warmth, the document spread like a battle plan beneath the lights. "She came because this place let people be human," Lily said. Nathan absorbed that as if it were both blessing and command. Then he stepped into the cold night, leaving Lily inside Carter's bakery with 30 days, a dangerous plan, and the unsettling hope that the street which refused to disappear might not have to fight alone. Nathaniel Reed entered the Reed Properties headquarters before sunrise, carrying the smell of coffee, flour, and old paper on his coat. The building rose above the financial district in glass and steel, clean enough to make weather look undisciplined. Inside, everything was quiet, polished, and controlled. Security greeted him by name. The elevator recognized his access card. The executive floor opened before him with the smooth obedience of a world built to respond to power. And for the first time, Nathan noticed how cold it felt to be obeyed by doors. Evelyn Shaw was already waiting in the conference room. She wore a cream blouse, a charcoal blazer, and the expression of a woman who had not slept because someone else's conscience had interrupted her schedule. On the glass table lay the Maple Row redevelopment file, contractor updates, investor memos, and a printed copy of the 30-day suspension order Nathan had given over the phone. "You stopped field activity without board approval," she said before he sat down. Nathan removed his coat slowly. "Yes, that was not a question." "I know." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. She was not cruel in the way his father could be. She was practical, and practicality could be just as merciless when trained never to ask what numbers stood on. "We have contractors on hold, investors calling, zoning partners expecting movement, and a signed development timeline." "I am aware." Then perhaps explain why a man who has spent 3 years shaping this project decided to halt it after one morning on Maple Row. Nathan looked at the file on the table. "Because one morning was the first time I actually saw it." Evelyn leaned back. "That sounds poetic. It will not satisfy investors." "No," Nathan said. "It probably won't." She studied him more carefully then. "You met someone." The accuracy of it irritated him because it made the transformation sound smaller than it was. "I met the street." "And it has a spokeswoman?" He thought of Lily Carter behind the bakery counter, eyes sharp with hurt, hands dusted in flour, refusing to become a receipt in his redemption story. "Yes," he said, "but she did not ask me to become sentimental. She asked me to become specific." He opened the folder Lily had kept and placed a copy of the community's counter notes beside Reed's redevelopment plan. Evelyn glanced at the handwritten names, old photographs, repair estimates, possible tax credit paths, historic designation notes, and revenue-sharing proposal Nathan had worked on after leaving the bakery. Her expression remained composed, but her fingers slowed when she reached the page marked Tenant Advisory Board. "You are proposing a preservation restructure. I am proposing we stop treating displacement as a line item. And if the board refuses, then I will force the discussion publicly if I have to." That was the first sentence that truly unsettled her. Evelyn looked up. "You would damage your own company?" "I am trying to prevent the company from damaging people beyond repair." "People recover, do they?" Nathan asked. The room went silent. He thought of Lily counting the morning's earnings twice. Martha's soup, Samuel's father's receipts, his mother's note folded in the bakery office. Or do they just learn to live around what men like us call progress? Evelyn did not answer immediately. For the first time, the polished room held something uncomfortable enough to be true. The door opened before she could respond. Graham Reed entered without knocking. Nathan's father was 70, tall, silver-haired, and still broad-shouldered enough to make age look like a negotiation he had not agreed to. He had built Reed Properties from a regional firm into a national force, and he wore that history like armor. His suit was dark, his expression colder than the winter glass behind him. "I hear my son has fallen in love with a bakery," he said. Evelyn stood. Nathan did not. "Good morning, Father." Graham looked at the papers on the table with open distaste. Photographs, handwritten notes, community stories. He picked up one page between two fingers as if it might stain him. Is this a business plan or a funeral program? Nathan felt the old reflex rise, defend carefully, lower the temperature, earn respect by sounding less emotional than he felt. Then he saw, almost vividly, Lily standing in front of the service counter saying, "Power without responsibility is just a cleaner word for harm." He placed both hands on the table. "It is a business plan with memory included." Graham's mouth tightened. "Memory does not pay debt?" "No," Nathan said. "But forgetting creates a different kind." Evelyn's gaze moved between them, alert now, sensing that the argument had outgrown the project file. Graham turned fully toward his son. "You were raised better than this?" "I was raised to acquire before asking what I was touching." "You were raised to survive?" Nathan's voice lowered. "Is that what you call it?" His father's eyes hardened. Graham moved to the window, looking down at the city as if height confirmed his position. "When your mother died, this company was bleeding cash. Investors circled, competitors smiled. Everyone expected me to collapse into sentiment and lose what I had built." Nathan had heard versions of this speech before. Grief turned into work. Loss turned into expansion, pain turned into proof that Reed men did not break publicly. But this time, Nathan heard what was missing. His mother's name, her warmth, her actual life, not the polished absence Graham had used as fuel. "Caroline went to Carter's bakery," Nathan said. The room changed, only slightly but enough. Graham's back stiffened before he turned. "What?" "She knew Beatrice Carter. She wrote to her. She sat in that bakery, drank black coffee, bought cinnamon bread, and said it was the one place in town where no one expected her to shine." For the first time in Nathan's memory, his father looked not angry, but exposed. Then anger arrived to cover it. "Who told you that?" "She did, in her own handwriting." Graham crossed the room quickly. "You have no idea what you are opening? I think that is exactly what frightens you. Do not use your mother to excuse weakness." Nathan stood then. The chair moved back with a sharp sound against the floor. "I am not using her. I am trying to stop using the version of her you built to justify becoming a man who destroys anything tender before it can ask something of him." Evelyn looked down. Even she understood they had passed the edge of corporate language. Graham's face went pale with fury. "Tenderness did not keep a roof over your head." "No," Nathan said. "You did, and I am grateful. But you built more roofs than anyone could live under and still managed to make home feel cold." The words landed before he could soften them. Part of him wanted to take them back because he was still a son. Another part of him, the part that had sat inside Carter's bakery reading Caroline Reed's letter, knew the sentence had been waiting years for a voice. Graham turned away first. That felt more devastating than victory. Evelyn cleared her throat carefully. "Mr. Reed, the board will require a decision by noon. Contractors are scheduled for preliminary access tomorrow. If we miss the window, there are penalties." Graham seized the practical language as if grateful for a weapon. "Then proceed." Nathan looked at him. "No." Graham's eyes cut back. "This is not your decision alone. The final authorization requires my signature." "And if I remove you from that authority?" Nathan's heartbeat slowed strangely. "Then everyone will know why." For a moment, father and son stood across the glass table from each other, every polished surface reflecting men who had inherited the same grief and chosen different prisons. Graham spoke first, very softly. "You would humiliate your own family for a row of failing shops?" Nathan thought of Lily's grandmother's oven, Martha's purple coat, Samuel's father's workbench, his mother's smile in winter sunlight. "No," he said. "I would finally stop humiliating her memory by pretending she only belonged in rooms like this." Graham's hand tightened around the back of a chair. Nathan turned to Evelyn. "No contractors on Maple Row. No site inspections. No tenant pressure. Prepare a board packet with the preservation restructure by 10. Evelyn hesitated. Graham said, "Do not." The room held its breath. Evelyn had built her career by obeying power accurately, but she was too intelligent not to recognize when power had fractured. She looked at Nathan. "You understand this may cost you your position?" "Yes." "And significant personal capital?" "Yes." "And your father may override whatever he can." Nathan's expression did not change. "Then we make it harder for him to do quietly." Back at Carter's bakery, Lily opened the blue recipe box again after the morning rush. She did not know why. Maybe because Nathan had taken copies of the documents and walked into a world she could not see. Maybe because Caroline Reed's letter had left the office feeling unfinished. Beneath the cinnamon bread card, behind 2 yellowed receipts, Lily found another folded paper in Beatrice Carter's handwriting. It was not a letter exactly, more like a note written to herself. "Caroline cried today, said Graham wants to buy the South End someday and make it respectable." Told her I'd keep the oven warm as long as God gave me flour. Some streets don't need saving from themselves. They need saving from men who can't remember love. Lily sat down slowly in the office chair. The words blurred, not because she was weak, but because the story had become older and deeper than eviction notices. Maple Row had been threatened before Nathan was old enough to inherit the threat. Beatrice had known, Caroline had known. And now Lily knew that protecting the bakery was not only about saving a business, it was about finishing a promise made between two women who understood that warmth could be resistance. Her phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Samuel appeared. Lily, machines just parked at the end of the street. They say it's preliminary access. You need to come now. Lily stood so fast the chair hit the wall behind her. By the time Lily reached Maple Row, the machines were already there. Two yellow construction vehicles stood at the far end of the street like animals waiting to be released, their metal arms lifted against the pale winter morning. A white company truck idled behind them, hazard lights blinking in slow, indifferent rhythm. Men in hard hats spoke near the curb with clipboards and coffee cups, as if they had arrived to repair a sidewalk instead of frighten an entire street awake. Snow crunched beneath Lily's boots as she hurried toward Carter's bakery. The green door was still locked, the sign still hung above it, but for the first time in her life, the building looked like something someone else had already decided was gone. Samuel was waiting outside his shop, jaw tight, coat thrown over his work shirt. Martha stood beside him, wrapped in her purple scarf, holding her cane in one hand and her phone in the other. Elise from the stationery store had tears in her eyes, but a folder of documents pressed fiercely against her chest. Mr. Kwan stood in front of his locksmith shop, keys jangling from his belt with every tense movement. More neighbors arrived in small groups, pulled from breakfast tables, back rooms, and apartments over storefronts. No one shouted at first. Fear was too fresh for noise. They only gathered, shoulder to shoulder, watching the machines that had come before the 30 days were even half gone. What happened? Lily asked, breathless. Samuel pointed toward a man in a gray overcoat speaking with one of the contractors. They say it's not demolition. They say it's preliminary structural access. That's the same thing with cleaner shoes, Martha said. Elise opened her folder with shaking hands. They can't do this. Nathan suspended activity. Apparently his father unsuspended what he could, Samuel replied. Lily felt the words hit low in her stomach. Graham Reed, of course. Power rarely waited politely when conscience stood in its way. It found another door. The representative approached with a laminated badge hanging from his neck. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, using a calm voice designed to make resistance seem unreasonable, we are not here to remove anyone today. This is a scheduled access review connected to future redevelopment. Future for whom? Samuel asked. The man glanced at him, then at Lily, then at the growing crowd. All notices have been properly issued. Lily stepped forward, and all activity was suspended. The representative gave her a thin smile. Certain inspections remain permissible under existing agreements. Lily looked toward Carter's bakery. Behind the fogged front windows, the bakery was dark. No oven light, no coffee steam, no morning bell. She had left in such a hurry that she had not even unlocked the door. For a terrible second, she imagined the place empty forever, the photographs removed, the recipe boxes packed, the counter stripped, the smell of cinnamon replaced by plaster dust. Then her hand closed around the folded paper in her coat pocket. Beatrice's note. Some streets don't need saving from themselves. They need saving from men who can't remember love. Lily walked to the bakery door and unlocked it. The bell rang into the cold morning, small and brave. Everyone watched as she stepped inside, turned on the lights, and disappeared behind the counter. For a moment, Samuel thought she was hiding. Then the old oven rumbled awake. A warm amber glow appeared behind the front glass. Lily came back out holding Beatrice's recipe card in one hand and Caroline Reed's copied letter in the other. She stood in front of the green door, not dramatic, not reckless, simply present. This bakery opens at sunrise, she said, and today is no different. The representative sighed. Ms. Carter, please do not make this more difficult than necessary. Martha laughed once, sharp as a cracked bell. Oh, honey, difficult came in a truck. A few neighbors murmured agreement. Lily kept her eyes on the representative. You can inspect paperwork from the sidewalk. You can call lawyers. You can wait for Nathaniel Reed because he issued the suspension. But no one enters Carter's bakery without my consent today. The man's patience thinned. You may not have the legal authority to refuse access? Then write that down carefully, Lily said. I want the record to show exactly who had to force open a bakery door before breakfast. The crowd shifted behind her. Samuel stepped to her left, Martha to her right. Elise, Mr. Kwan, and the other shopkeepers filled in along the sidewalk. No one pushed, no one threatened. They stood where their lives had taught them to stand, in front of what they could not bear to lose. Phones came out. Someone began recording. A local reporter, summoned by one of Martha's church friends, hurried down the block with a camera bag bouncing against his hip. The representative's expression changed when he noticed the lens. Paperwork liked quiet rooms. It looked uglier in daylight. Across town, Nathan received Lily's message while standing in the middle of a boardroom war. Graham sat at one end of the table, surrounded by directors who made concern sound like strategy. Evelyn stood near the screen, a revised contractor schedule open behind her. When Nathan read Samuel's text forwarded by Lily, machines were on Maple Row, claiming preliminary access. The room narrowed to a single point. He looked at his father. Graham's expression did not change. That was enough. "You authorized access," Nathan said. Graham folded his hands. "I authorized lawful inspection activity. After I suspended field operations, you suspended revenue." Nathan stood, and the movement silenced the room. For years he had fought his father in measured tones, careful not to break the image of unity that kept investors comfortable. But Maple Row did not have the luxury of his composure. He placed the preservation packet in front of the directors. "Every person at this table now has the tenant impact documents, the preservation restructure, and evidence that this project was designed to move faster than the people affected by it could defend themselves." Graham gave a quiet laugh. "You think threatening scandal makes you brave?" "No," Nathan said. "I think hiding harm made me cowardly." The room froze. Evelyn's hand tightened around the remote. Nathan continued, his voice steadier now. "I approved acquisition phases without reading the human impact closely enough. That is on me. But I will not sign demolition. I will not support forced displacement. And I will not let this company use my mother's old street as proof that grief can be monetized indefinitely." Graham rose slowly. "Your mother has nothing to do with this." Nathan looked at him with a calm that had taken years of pain to find. "She has everything to do with what I refuse to become." Nathan gathered his coat. "If anyone wants to remove me, call the vote. If anyone wants to proceed without me, prepare to do it in public with every document attached." Evelyn finally spoke. "Nathaniel, where are you going?" He looked toward the city beyond the glass. "To stop men with machines from mistaking access for permission." Then he walked out before his father could order him not to. Behind him, the boardroom erupted into voices, but Nathan did not turn back. For the first time in his life, losing power felt less frightening than keeping it for the wrong reason. On Maple Row, the representative had made 3 phone calls and grown less confident after each one. The contractors stayed near their vehicles, uncertain whether they were dealing with a legal job or a public relations disaster. Lily remained in front of the bakery, the recipe card now tucked safely in her coat pocket. The local reporter had begun interviewing Martha, which was unfortunate for Reed Properties and excellent for anyone who appreciated truth served without politeness. "This street fed people before those men learned to spell redevelopment," Martha said into the camera. Samuel stood with his arms crossed, watching the company truck. "No one touches that door," he said quietly. Nathan arrived 12 minutes later. He did not arrive in a limousine or with a legal team arranged behind him like armor. He came in a dark sedan, stepped out alone, and walked quickly toward the crowd with his coat open against the cold. Every face turned. Suspicion moved through the gathered neighbors like wind. Lily watched him approach and felt her heart do something inconvenient. Not soften exactly, but recognized that he had come before the damage began. That mattered. Not enough, but it mattered. The representative looked relieved for half a second. Then he saw Nathan's face. "Mr. Reed," the representative said, "we were proceeding under existing access provisions." "No," Nathan replied. "You were exploiting them." The man blinked. Nathan turned toward the contractors. "Shut down the equipment, remove the vehicles from Maple Row, no inspection, no access, no contractor presence without written community notice and my direct authorization." One contractor hesitated. Nathan's voice lowered. "Now!" The machines were turned off one by one. The sudden quiet after the engines died felt almost holy. Only then did Lily realize how loudly fear had been vibrating in the street. No one cheered. The street had learned not to mistake interruption for victory. Nathan turned to the local reporter. "If you are recording, keep recording." Then he faced the camera, the neighbors, and Lily. "My name is Nathaniel Reed. Reed Properties acquired several buildings on Maple Row as part of a redevelopment plan that would have displaced long-standing businesses and residents. I approved early phases of that project without understanding or respecting the full human cost. That was wrong." The representative tried to interrupt, but Nathan continued. "Carter's Bakery is not parcel 14B. Samuel Brooks's shop is not 11A. Martha Ellis's home is not 9C. These are not obstacles. They are lives, histories, and community anchors." The street went silent in a different way now. Not safe, Not saved, but altered. Nathan's voice carried through the cold morning. Effective immediately, I am withdrawing support for the demolition plan and submitting an alternative preservation proposal to the board and city council. It will include building repairs, protected leases, tenant participation, and historic commercial designation where applicable. It will also include oversight so Reed Properties cannot call preservation a marketing feature while pushing people out quietly afterward. Evelyn would call that line legally risky. Graham would call it betrayal. Lily thought, unwillingly, that it sounded like a man burning the bridge back to the version of himself who had arrived before dawn. When the machines finally left Maple Row, their tracks remained in the slush, ugly and deep, but the street could breathe again. Neighbors moved slowly, some crying, some arguing about next steps, some following Martha into the bakery because she declared that revolution required coffee. Nathan entered only as far as the doorway, waiting for Lily to decide whether he could come closer. She looked at him across the warm bakery air, with fresh bread rising between them like something alive. "You understand this doesn't fix everything," she said. "Yes. It doesn't erase the notice. I know. It doesn't make you safe." "No," Nathan said softly. "It makes me accountable." Lily held his gaze for a long moment. "Then don't come back with promises," she said. "Come back with proof." Proof did not arrive all at once. It arrived in meetings that lasted too long, in revised proposals covered with comments, in lawyers arguing over clauses that looked small until someone's rent depended on them. It arrived through city forms, preservation applications, emergency repair estimates, and public hearings where Maple Row's residents learned that speaking into microphones could feel almost as frightening as standing in front of machines. Nathan did come back, but not with promises wrapped in elegance. He came with documents Lily could verify, timelines people could challenge, and answers that did not always make him look good. That mattered, not because it made him forgiven, because it made him useful without asking to be admired. Carter's Bakery became the place where the street organized itself into a future. By dawn, Lily baked. By afternoon, she met with shopkeepers, city clerks, contractors, and community advocates. By evening, the tables were covered in leases, sketches, repair lists, coffee cups, and crumbs from whatever bread had not sold. Samuel became impossible about every detail involving tenant protections. Martha turned out to know half the city council by first name and the other half by scandal. Elise designed flyers so beautiful people kept them on refrigerators instead of throwing them away, and Nathan sat where Lily placed him, not at the center, but inside the work. The first major victory was not romantic. It was plumbing. A burst pipe in the building beside the bakery had been ignored so long that the upstairs tenants had learned where to place buckets in their sleep. Under the old plan, repairs had been delayed because demolition made maintenance financially unnecessary. Lily nearly threw the report across the table when she read that phrase. Nathan did not defend it. He authorized emergency repairs from funds his father had intended to use for site preparation. When Samuel asked whether that was legal, Nathan said, "It is now documented, reversible only by public board objection, and extremely irritating to my father." For the first time, Samuel laughed in front of him. Slowly, Maple Row changed without disappearing. Scaffolding went up, but not to erase facades. Electricians repaired old wiring. Masons restored brickwork. Painters refreshed signs instead of replacing them with identical luxury branding. The florist's empty shop was offered to a local cooperative instead of a national chain. Mr. Kwan's locksmith storefront kept its old brass key sign. Samuel's shoe repair shop received a new awning that matched the original one in a photograph from 1978. And Carter's Bakery, worn and beloved, finally received the structural repairs Lily had needed for years but could never afford without risking everything else. Nathan did not write a press release about the bakery repairs. Lily noticed that. He did not post photos of himself holding a hammer beside working men. He did not call the local paper to explain how deeply he had changed. He learned, sometimes awkwardly, to appear when needed and disappear when the moment belonged to someone else. One afternoon, Lily found him sweeping sawdust near the back door after a contractor left a mess. His sleeves were rolled up, his hair slightly disordered, his expensive shoes powdered with dust. She stood in the doorway for several seconds before he noticed her. "You know we have brooms for people who are not billionaires," she said. Nathan looked down at the broom in his hands. "I was told this one works for all income brackets." Lily tried not to smile and failed a little. It was the first unguarded smile she had given him since the morning he confessed his name. Nathan saw it, but to his credit, he did not seize it as victory. He only smiled back gently and returned to sweeping. That restraint moved her more than any grand speech would have. The man who had once owned the street on paper was learning how to stand inside it without possessing every moment. And Lily, against her better judgment, began to feel less alone when he was there. Trust returned in small, inconvenient pieces. It returned when Nathan gave Samuel a draft lease and said, "Find everything wrong with it." It returned when he let Martha scold him for removing the old bench outside the bakery without asking, then had it restored by sunset. It returned when Evelyn Shaw attended a community meeting and, after 3 hours of being corrected by residents, admitted the preservation model was stronger because it had forced Reed Properties to stop guessing what people needed. It returned when Nathan told Lily his father had resigned from active control of the Maple Row project after the board refused to defend the original demolition plan publicly. He did not say it triumphantly. He looked sad. Lily understood. Some victories still cost a son something. One evening, after a long day of repairs, Lily found him standing before the wall of photographs. Caroline Reed's picture had been given a new frame, not larger than the others, just safer behind clean glass. Beside it, Lily had placed a copy of Beatrice's note about keeping the oven warm. Nathan stood with his hands in his pockets, reading the words again. "I used to think my mother disappeared when she died," he said quietly. Lily came to stand beside him. "Maybe people disappear less when we find the places they were loved." Nathan looked at her then, and the tenderness in his face was careful, almost afraid of itself. "I think she was loved here." "She was," Lily said. Then, after a moment, "So were a lot of people." "I know." This time, the words did not sound like retreat. They sounded like remembrance. Lily turned toward the bakery, now half restored and half chaotic, with covered counters, paint samples, tools, and trays of cooling bread sharing space like a family argument. "My grandmother always said places keep what people leave behind." Nathan looked around. "What do you think this place kept from her?" Lily touched the edge of the counter. "Courage. And the belief that warmth could be a form of resistance." Nathan was quiet for a while. Then he said, "That is what you do." Lily glanced at him. "What?" "You resist with warmth." She almost dismissed it, but the words had found something true. She had thought of herself as tired, practical, stubborn, maybe foolish. Not brave in any dramatic way, but perhaps courage did not always look like standing before machines. Sometimes it looked like opening a bakery before sunrise when the world had already written your ending. Sometimes it looked like feeding people who could not pay. Sometimes it looked like refusing to let cold people define the value of warm places. The night before Maple Row's reopening, Lily stayed late at the bakery to finish the old front sign. The restored letters lay across the counter. Carter's Bakery, green and cream, chipped in a few places on purpose because Lily refused to make the sign look younger than its history. Nathan arrived with 2 coffees and no agenda she could see. "Am I allowed in?" he asked from the doorway. Lily looked up from touching up the paint. "That depends." "On? Whether you came with advice?" He lifted the coffees. "Only caffeine? Then enter carefully." He set one cup beside her and picked up a small brush when she nodded toward it. They worked in silence for a while, repairing edges, steadying letters, wiping excess paint from the wood. The bakery lights were low, the oven cooling after the last test batch of bread, the front windows reflecting both of them side by side. Nathan did not speak until Lily placed the final letter down. "I fell in love with you here," he said. The brush froze in her hand. He continued quickly, but not carelessly. "Not because you sheltered me, not because you made me feel forgiven, because you taught me to recognize the difference between owning something and honoring it." Lily set the brush down slowly. Her heart had become very still. "Nathan, I know," he said. "I know love does not cancel harm. I know I do not get to arrive with one confession and ask to stand at the center of your life. I am not asking for that." His voice softened. "I just wanted to say it honestly, in the place where I first began to become honest." Lily looked at him across the old sign, across the months of anger, documents, repairs, and cautious trust. The man before her was not the stranger on the bench anymore, and he was not entirely the man from the eviction notice either. "I don't know if I'm ready to call this love," she said. Nathan nodded, though pain moved through his eyes. "I understand. But I know I look for you when something good happens," she continued. His expression changed. "And I hate that when something scares me, part of me wonders what you will think." A small, helpless laugh escaped her. "That is inconvenient." Nathan's smile trembled. "Very." Lily looked down at the sign, then back at him. "I am not a street you get to save and then claim?" "No," he said immediately. "You are a woman I hope to keep earning the right to know." The answer undid some small knot inside her. She stepped around the counter and picked up the restored letter C, brushing dust from its edge. "This sign goes up tomorrow." "I know. It belonged to my grandmother." "Yes." It belongs to me now. Yes. And if you stand beside me when it goes up, it will not be because you saved it. Nathan met her eyes. It will be because you allow me to witness it. Lily held his gaze for a long time. Then she handed him the letter carefully. Then hold this without dropping it. He accepted the letter with both hands as if she had given him something sacred. Maybe she had. Together they carried the sign pieces to the front of the bakery and leaned them against the wall beneath the window. Outside, Maple Row was quiet, no longer abandoned, no longer untouched, but alive with scaffolds, fresh paint, repaired lights, and the strange beauty of a place allowed to age without being erased. Lily stood beside Nathan and looked at the street her grandmother had loved. For the first time in months, she could imagine it 10 years from now, not frozen in the past, not sold into a future that forgot its name. Living. Nathan looked at her profile in the warm window light. "There's one more thing," he said. Lily gave him a warning look. "If it is another document, I may scream." "No document." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a duplicate of Caroline Reed's photograph, but behind it was a new picture taken that week. Lily, Samuel, Martha, Mr. Kwan, Elise, Nathan, and half the neighborhood standing in front of Carter's bakery with sawdust on their clothes and ridiculous smiles on their faces. "I thought the wall should have proof of this too," he said. Lily took the photo and her eyes filled before she could stop them. She placed the new photograph beside Caroline and Beatrice's, not above it, not replacing it, but continuing it. Nathan stood slightly behind her, close enough for warmth, far enough for choice. Lily looked at the wall, past and present, grief and restoration, memory and beginning, and understood that Carter's bakery had not survived because one powerful man changed his mind. It had survived because a community refused to disappear, because old promises found new hands, and because love, when it was honest, learned to protect before it tried to possess. She turned to Nathan then, her eyes bright with exhaustion and hope. "Tomorrow," she said, "we open the door." Nathan smiled softly. "And this time?" Lily looked toward the warm bakery windows facing Maple Row. "This time, the whole street comes in." Maple Row reopened on a Saturday morning so bright and cold that every window on the street glittered as if winter itself had decided to attend. There were no velvet ropes, no champagne towers, no polished speeches written by people who had never stood behind a counter with rent overdue. Instead, there were paper lanterns strung between old storefronts, fresh paint on weathered brick, repaired signs swinging above familiar doors, and neighbors carrying folding chairs, coffee cups, flower buckets, and trays of food from one shop to another. The street did not look new. That was the miracle. It looked remembered. It looked restored. It looked like a place that had been allowed to keep its soul. Carter's Bakery stood at the center of it all, with its green door freshly painted and its old sign restored above the entrance. The letters still carried small chips in the wood because Lily had insisted on keeping them. "Scars are not always damage," she had told the sign painter. "Sometimes they are proof that something lasted." Inside, the ovens had been working since before sunrise, filling the bakery with the smell of cinnamon bread, butter rolls, apple pastries, and coffee strong enough to make Martha call it spiritual reinforcement. Lily moved from counter to oven to display case with flour on her cheek and tears threatening every time she looked at the door. For the first time in months, the bakery was not opening under threat. No notice waited beside the register. No legal envelope sat like a shadow over the bread baskets. No machine idled at the end of the street. There were still challenges ahead because preservation was not a fairy tale and community did not repair itself with one public announcement. But the leases had been rewritten. The repairs were funded, the tenant council had legal authority, and Reed Properties no longer held Maple Row like a fist. It held responsibility now, supervised by the very people it had once tried to move aside. Lily placed Caroline Reed's photograph back on the wall just before opening. Beside it, she placed the newer photo Nathan had given her, the whole street standing in front of the bakery, exhausted, dusty, smiling, alive. Beatrice Carter's note was framed beneath both pictures. Some streets don't need saving from themselves, they need saving from men who can't remember love. Lily touched the frame once, gently. "Good morning, Grandma," she whispered. Then she turned on the front lights. The bakery windows glowed warm against the cold street, and Maple Row began to arrive. Martha came first, of course, because she claimed seniority over anyone who had not survived 3 city council meetings and a winter gas leak in the same month. She brought a vase of yellow flowers and placed it near the register without asking. Samuel came next with a polished pair of Lily's old boots, repaired and shined until they looked like they had decided to forgive the weather. "Mr. Wow." Quan brought a small brass key on a ribbon and told Lily it was symbolic, though he refused to explain exactly what it opened. Elise brought handwritten place cards for every shop on the street. One by one, the people of Maple Row filled the bakery, not as customers only, but as witnesses. Nathan arrived after the first rush had already begun. Lily saw him through the window before he reached the door. He stood outside for a moment, looking at the sign, the green door, the people moving inside, the street alive around him. He wore a dark wool coat, simple and elegant, but there was no corporate armor in the way he stood. No entourage, no cameras, no executive posture waiting to be admired, just a man who had once owned the street on paper and had learned painfully that paper could not tell him what anything was worth. When he finally entered, the bell rang softly above him. The bakery quieted for half a second, not with hostility, not anymore, but with memory. Everyone remembered the machines, everyone remembered the documents, everyone remembered that Nathaniel Reed had been both part of the threat and part of the turning point. Samuel looked at him first, then pointed toward a tray near the counter. "If you're going to stand there looking dramatic, carry those rolls." Martha smiled into her coffee. Lily lowered her head to hide her own smile. Nathan took off his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and picked up the tray without a word. The bakery exhaled. By noon, the celebration had spilled onto the sidewalk. Children drew chalk flowers near the curb. A jazz trio played softly outside the old record shop, now reopened by a young couple who promised to keep the blue door. The florist cooperative handed out single stems to anyone who passed. Samuel's shop displayed a sign reading, "Repair is resistance," which Martha declared dramatic but accurate. People moved in and out of Carter's bakery until the bell above the door sounded almost like laughter. Lily watched it all from behind the counter and felt something inside her loosen. For months, she had fought to keep the past from being erased. Only now did she understand she had also been fighting for the right to imagine a future. When the city council representative asked Lily to say a few words outside the bakery, she nearly refused. She was not a speechmaker, she was a baker. Her best arguments usually came wrapped in parchment paper or pulled warm from an oven. But then she looked at the faces gathered along Maple Row, Martha with her cane, Samuel with his arms crossed, Elise holding back tears, Mr. Quan standing straight beneath his old brass key sign, Nathan near the doorway watching her with quiet faith. So Lily stepped onto the small wooden crate someone had placed by the entrance. The street settled into silence. "My grandmother used to say that bread teaches patience," Lily began. Her voice was not loud, but people leaned in to hear it. "You cannot rush it just because you are hungry. You cannot threaten it into rising. You give it time, warmth, and care, and then you wait." She looked down briefly, smiling through emotion. "I think places are like that too. A street is not alive because someone buys it. It is alive because people spend years showing up for one another inside it." Martha wiped her eyes without pretending otherwise. Samuel looked at the ground. Nathan stood completely still. "For a while," Lily continued, "we were told Maple Row was old, inefficient, and ready to become something more valuable." A murmur moved through the crowd. But value is not only measured by what a building can sell for after everyone who loved it is gone. Value is the widow who finds soup when her kitchen feels too lonely. It is the worker who gets his shoes repaired because buying new ones would break the week's budget. It is the letter written at a counter. It is the photograph kept on a wall. It is a door that opens before sunrise because someone outside is cold. Her eyes found Nathan for one brief second. He looked down, overwhelmed. "So today is not just about reopening a bakery," Lily said. "It is about remembering that progress without memory becomes erasure, and memory without courage becomes only nostalgia. Maple Row is still here because people stood together, told the truth, and refused to let fear become the architect of our future." Applause rose slowly, then strongly. Not polished applause, not polite applause, the kind that came from hands that had carried boxes, signed petitions, scrubbed paint, brewed coffee, reviewed documents, and refused to disappear. Lily stepped down with trembling knees. Martha hugged her first, then the street seemed to hug her all at once. Nathan waited until the crowd loosened before approaching. He did not interrupt the congratulations. He did not step into the center of the moment. He simply remained near the green door, holding a folded cloth someone had asked him to carry, and looking at Lily as if the sight of her standing there had answered a question he had been asking badly for years. When she finally came back inside the bakery, cheeks flushed from the cold and emotion, he was arranging rolls on a tray with unnecessary concentration. "You're putting them too close together," she said. He looked up. "I was afraid to be accused of underserving the community." She laughed softly. The sound warmed him more than the oven did. By late afternoon, the bakery had emptied into a quiet kind of mess. Crumbs covered the tables, Coffee rings marked the counter. The display case was almost bare. Outside, the celebration continued in softer waves, but inside Carter's bakery, the light had turned golden and low. Lily stood behind the counter, looking around at the exhaustion of a good day. Nathan picked up empty cups without being asked. Samuel had taken Martha home to rest. Elise was closing her shop. For the first time since before the eviction notice arrived, Lily and Nathan were alone in the bakery without crisis standing between them. The silence was different this time. Not the silence of accusation, not the silence of secrets. It was the quiet after work honestly done. Lily turned the sign on the door from open to closed, but she did not lock it yet. Outside, snow began falling again, light and slow, brushing the windows with silver. Nathan noticed at the same time she did. "The first morning," he said quietly. Lily looked through the glass at the snow. "Yes, but no machines this time." "No," she said, "no machines." He stood a few steps away, careful as always now. "I have thought about that morning more times than I can count," he said. "I was sitting outside telling myself I was lost because I did not want to admit I had followed the light." Lily turned back toward him. "The bakery light?" He nodded. "And maybe something else. I had spent so long inside buildings my family owned that I forgot what it felt like to be welcome somewhere I had no claim to." His voice softened. "You gave me shelter before you knew my name. Then when you learned it, you forced me to become worthy of saying it honestly." Lily leaned against the counter, arms folded, but not defensively. "I did not force you, Nathan." "No," he said, "you didn't. You simply refused to make it easy for me to stay the same." That answer settled gently between them. The oven clicked as it cooled. Snow moved down the window in delicate streaks. The wall of photographs watched over them. Beatrice, Caroline, the old street fair, the new reopening photo, all the proof that love and memory could survive being threatened by men with plans. Nathan looked at the wall, then back at Lily. "I don't want to own your world," he said. "I want to protect what it means if you'll let me stand close enough to learn how." Lily's eyes filled slowly. She hated how easily tears came after hard seasons ended. During the fight, she had held herself together because everyone needed direction, coffee, documents, answers, courage. Now tenderness felt more dangerous than battle. "Trust is not like signing papers," she said. "I know. It does not become real because a room agrees to it." "I know." She gave him a small, tearful smile. "Trust is more like bread." Nathan's eyes softened. "Time, warmth, and patience?" "And attention," Lily said. "If you ignore it, it collapses." He stepped closer, stopping where she could still choose the distance. "I will pay attention," he said. The words were simple, no grand vow, no promise to fix everything forever, but Lily had learned that simple words, when lived, could become stronger than beautiful ones spoken for effect. She studied his face. The man who had arrived frozen outside her bakery, the man whose name had nearly destroyed her street, the man who stood before machines and his father, the man who swept sawdust and carried rolls and learned to sit somewhere other than the head of the table. He was not safe because he had changed once. He was becoming safe because he kept choosing change. Lily walked to the oven and opened it just enough to release the last pocket of warmth from the day's final batch. Inside sat one small loaf she had forgotten to put out, its crust golden, imperfect, and fragrant. She laughed under her breath. "My grandmother would say that means the house kept something back for us." Nathan smiled. "Then we should not disappoint her." Lily took the loaf out, wrapped it in a clean cloth, and placed it on the counter between them. For a moment, they stood on either side of it, just as they had once stood on either side of suspicion, grief, and a street map. Then Lily tore the bread in half and handed him a piece. Nathan accepted it with both hands. The gesture made her remember the first morning, his cold fingers around a chipped mug, his silence full of things she did not yet know. This time, his hands were warm. This time, his name was no longer hidden. This time, the truth sat openly in the room with them, not painless, but no longer poisonous. He took a bite, and his eyes closed briefly. "Honest bread," he said. Lily smiled. "The kind that doesn't pretend to be cake." They both laughed softly, and the sound felt like something fragile, finally learning it could live. Outside, Maple Row glowed under repaired lamps and falling snow. Inside, Carter's bakery held its warmth like a promise. Nathan set the bread down and looked at Lily with a tenderness that no longer tried to persuade her. "I love you," he said. The words were quiet, almost careful enough to leave if she asked them to. Lily's breath caught, not because she was surprised, but because some part of her had known and had been waiting to see whether he would say it without asking it to solve anything. She stepped closer. "I know," she whispered. His smile trembled. "That sounds like not quite an answer." "It is an answer," she said, "just not the whole one." He nodded, accepting even that with gratitude. Lily looked at the windows, the oven, the photographs, the green door, the counter her grandmother had worn smooth with years of work. Then she looked back at him. "I love the man who came back with proof," she said softly. "I love the man who stopped trying to own what he did not understand. And I love the man who is learning that protection is not control." Nathan's eyes shone. "But I also love this place, this street, and myself enough to keep choosing slowly." He swallowed. "Then I will be slow with you." That was the sentence that moved her the most. Not because it was dramatic, because it respected the pace of healing. Lily reached up and touched his face, her fingertips light against his cheek. Nathan went still, waiting, breathing as if the whole room had become sacred. She smiled through tears. "You really are learning." "I had a difficult teacher," he said. "She sounds wise." "She is terrifying." Lily laughed, and this time he laughed with her. The laughter faded gently, leaving them close enough for the truth between them to feel warm rather than sharp. Nathan lifted one hand, not to take, but to ask. Lily answered by stepping into him. Their first kiss began softly in the bakery's golden light, with snow touching the windows and the old oven cooling behind them. It was not a kiss that erased what had happened. It did not turn eviction notices into romance or make fear look beautiful after the fact. It was quieter and stronger than that. It was the kiss of two people who had learned that love cannot be built on rescue, ownership, or guilt. It must be kneaded slowly from truth, warmed by patience, and allowed to rise in its own time. Nathan's arms came around her carefully, and Lily let herself rest there without feeling claimed. That mattered. For so long she had been holding up the bakery, the street, the memory of her grandmother, the fear of loss, and the stubborn hope that warmth could outlast power. Now, for one breath, she allowed herself to be held. Not saved, not purchased, held. When they parted, Nathan rested his forehead near hers and whispered, "I will protect what you love." Lily touched his hand. "Protect it with me," she said. His answer came without hesitation. "Always." Later, after they cleaned the last cups and covered the remaining pastries, Lily locked the front door. She stood for a moment with the key in her hand, looking through the glass at Maple Row. The street was quiet now, but not empty. Lights glowed above shops that had almost closed forever. The old bench sat restored outside the bakery. Samuel's sign swung gently in the winter wind. Martha's upstairs window had a lamp burning in it. The snow covered the machine tracks at the end of the street until they looked less like scars and more like something the earth had decided not to remember forever. Nathan stood beside her, not leading, not lingering behind, simply sharing the view. On the wall behind them, Caroline Reed smiled beside Beatrice Carter. Below them, the new photograph waited for tomorrow's customers to notice and ask questions. Lily slipped her hand into Nathan's, and his fingers closed around hers with the care of someone who understood that trust was not possession. Together, they turned off the bakery lights, leaving only the small amber lamp above the oven glowing like a heartbeat. Outside, the sign Carter's Bakery shone softly over the green door. And inside, where the bread was still warm, Lily understood that home was not saved by one man's power. It was protected by every heart willing to remember what love was for.